Hello, gorgeous, heart-centered entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 163, and you might want to write that down because this is a juicy one. And you can find all the show notes and special links that I've got for you at tashcorbin.com/163. Today, what I'm going to talk to you about is how I have managed to reduce my work hours again in the last kind of 2 to 3 months in my business. And this is something that's very important to me. It's very near and dear to my heart. I started a business because I wanted to have a beautiful, big, adventurous life outside of my business and integrated with my business. And one of the things that's really important to me about that is that I do not work 40 hours plus per week. My goals for the last 2 years has been to work less than 20 hours a week in my business. And I'm pleased to let you know that actually in the last month, I was working less than 18 hours a week. And I want to tell you how I've been able to achieve this because I think this is a really important conversation for us to have. And so let's get started with this one now. So as I said earlier, it's really important to me that I do not work myself for hours and hours and hours and hours every day, 7 days a week in my business. I did not start a business to be the world's worst boss to myself. I did not start a business to work more hours than I was working in the corporate world. I did not start a business to burn myself out and not look after my health and well-being. And I bet that part of the reason why you started a business was also related to being in control of how many hours that you work and the time and energy that you put into your business and what you get to do outside of that as part of your life. Now, I 100% believe that there's no such thing as work-life balance and that work is here and life is here. I like to think of it more as having a great integration between my work and my life, between the work world that I've curated and the life world that I've created. I mean, half of my best friends have come out of the lady posse, so I don't think that it's possible, and nor do I want to have a complete separation between work and life. But I do have a separation between working hours and non-working hours in my business. And as I said at the start of this episode, I have now been able to reduce my working hours to 18 hours a week. And I want to talk about some of the ways that I've been able to do that this time around, because they're quite different to the ways that I did them last time. So just quickly to let you know how I reduced my work hours previously, number one, I just made the decision. I was like, you know what, I'm burning out. When I first started my business, I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I was like, I didn't start my business for this. And I made a decision, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. If I'm teaching my business that it needs me this many hours a week, then I don't want to be in this business. So I have to make it work some other way. Now, a lot of that came down to the Pareto principle. 20% of my work was getting 80% of my results. So I just needed to focus down on what that 20% was and really made sure I nailed that. And also Parkinson's law. A task or project will expand to take up the time that you give it. So if you give yourself a short deadline, guess what? You get things done really quickly. And it's 100% true. I think profit first is a great example of that in money terms as well. We will eat up all the money that's available to us. If you take your profit first, all of a sudden your business expenses reduce, or you're forced to make your business expenses reduce. These things happen. So Pareto and Parkinson were both genius, and we want to make sure that we are capitalizing on those two principles and being conscious and aware of them. And then the third thing that I did previously was to actually increase the hours of my assistant, the fabulous Jasmine, and force myself to delegate more effectively and not just delegate tasks, but actually delegate responsibilities as well. Now, it's been really interesting for me in the last sort of 9 months to a year since the Heart Centered Business Conference in September 2017. I've had this huge focus on simplifying my business. really simplifying things down. For example, instead of recording a podcast and a video blog each week, I record a video podcast, and then the audio is available on iTunes and on my blog, and we also now get that transcribed. So one piece of content is available as a video, as an audio, and as a written blog. Now, it might seem really simple to you. It's like, well, that's obvious, Tash. But honestly, for me, I was running myself ragged trying to create all these different pieces of content, and ultimately I wasn't able to be particularly consistent with my delivery of those. I would have a burst of 4 or 5 months when it worked really perfectly, and then for 3 months it would be crickets because the wheels fell off, because I was working myself way too hard. And to be honest with you, one of the big reasons why I was able to let that model go was because a lot of people at conference said to me, I can't keep up with everything you're creating, Tash. It would take me 10 hours a week just to absorb all the information and content that you share. And I can't do that. And I realized not only was I working way too hard in my content creation, I was making my audience work really hard in actually absorbing and listening to that content. So it was a win-win to simplify some of those things down. I've also closed down quite a few of my service offerings and courses over the last 9 months and even 12 months now. The Lean Startup School has been finished up. Get With the Program has been finished up. Courses with Heart has been finished up. So I can really focus down and intensify my efforts in the areas where it's most effective. Now, those behaviors and those strategies have been amazing and have really helped me. But something that I noticed in about August this year was that I was feeling like, I feel like I'm working a lot more hours than I was previously. I feel like my hours have crept up again. What's going on? So my first port of call was, believe it or not, to actually check in with my hours of work in my business. Was I working more hours in my business, or was it just my perception that I was working more hours in my business? And I actually noticed 2 things. Number one, I was doing a lot more live support calls than I had previously done. And that was because I had increased to 3 live support calls with the Heart Center Business Academy every month. I had 2 with Course with Heart. I had 2 with the Takeoff program. And then I also was doing my Get Profesh Sesh, which was a 2-hour live group training once a month. And I was running a webinar each month. And I was doing extra Facebook Lives and support calls. And I'd run a few rounds of the 7-day fast money challenge as well. And so I was actually spending a lot of time talking to camera, whether that be in live support calls, VIP one-on-one support calls. I'd also split my mastermind into Rising Stars and Shooting Stars and taken on the Q3 mastermind. So I had all of these live support calls that I was running, and I had increased my amount of time talking to camera and speaking to students. And that was really interesting for me to see. Number 2, I'd also increased the amount of time that I was just spending kind of tidying things up in my business. Jumping onto Facebook, jumping into my teamwork with my team, jumping onto Slack, checking in on things. And I'd actually started to expand those kind of downtime hours of work in my business. Instead of doing just my mighty 90 minutes in the morning and just an hour in the afternoon kind of behind the scenes in my business, I was spending 2 or 3 hours in the morning before my calls. I was spending 2 or 3 hours after my calls. Now, when you do the math on this, this kind of adds up to a 40-hour week, right? And so there were 2 things that were contributing to my increased hours of work. Number 1, I had changed up my business model kind of without really considering it and without thinking through the implications of that. I've changed up my business model to incorporate a lot more client-facing and me to camera time. But number 2, because my time purpose outside of my business had changed, I was kind of wasting my days away just in my business. So one of the big things that happened in August was we moved to Bali. And so instead of closing down my work at 5 o'clock in the evenings and going for a walk on the beach in the mornings and, you know, spending evenings with Davey, going out to see friends, going to the movies, those sorts of things, we found ourselves kind of just chilling at home in our villa, which we love, and I would just grab my laptop. I would just grab my phone. I would just do a little bit more work in my business. And so what I recognized was other than going for a massage or going for a swim or maybe going out to get some food here and there, honest Dave and I didn't really have a lot of purpose to our time outside of my business. That purpose had kind of disappeared. In Coolum, I was in this beautiful habit of going for a walk every morning on the beach. Now, living in Ubud, it's like 30 degrees by 7 a.m. I ain't getting out and going for a giant walk in the middle of the rice paddies. It's just doesn't appeal to me here in Bali. And the swimming pool didn't open till 9 and shut at 3. So I was putting my swim kind of in the middle of the day, and then my work hours were expanding outside of that. So there were a few things that were going on that meant my hours of work were increasing. Here's what I did about it. Number one, I reviewed my business model first and foremost. Those parts of my business where I'd kind of expanded the amount of time that it took for me to deliver weren't serving me and were actually contributing to me starting to feel like my business was hard work again. So I had a look at all of the courses and programs that were still remaining in my business and which ones really I felt were serving me and were serving my beautiful clients and were being really effective, and being really honest with myself about which ones I wasn't loving. And one of the big ones for me was my Courses with Heart program. I was finding that half of the time on my academy calls was talking about courses and launches, but most of the people in the academy weren't in Courses with Heart. And when I did my Courses with Heart live support calls, there weren't a lot of people showing up to them. And the questions that they were asking were 90% not about courses and launching, because a lot of the people who joined Courses with Heart wanted to be ready for courses and launches, but actually they realized quite quickly that they needed to do some more of the foundations of their business. So I saw that there was this overlap of the target market and the audience that I was serving with the Academy and with Courses with Heart. And I also saw, because for me, it's really clear, the stages of business: startup, scale and systemize, courses and launches, and then process orientation. And what I was seeing was that whilst I saw that as the best stages of business and the right way to progress through business, a lot of people would go startup, courses and launches, oh bugger, I need to scale and systemize, back to scale and systemize. And so those two stages of business, a lot of people had trouble self-identifying, doing it in the right order, and they were actually there was a lot more blur between those two different target markets. So what I decided to do was actually close down the Courses with Heart program, but incorporate it within the Academy, move all my Courses with Heart people over to the Academy so that they were still getting the Courses with Heart program and access to me and all of the other things that they get at the Academy. So it was a really beautiful win for all of the Courses with Heart students. But then also, I would then be able to have one call a month within the Academy dedicated to courses and launches, and voila, I have actually reduced my number of live support calls that I need to do each month by 1, but I've also made sure that the support calls that I do are going to be way more focused, and a lot of the questions that I get asked on Academy calls won't come up anymore, or I can direct people to the module within the Courses with Heart program because it's available in the Academy now. So it was a really cool decision for me to make. It felt really good when I made it. I had the right business strategy to deal with, okay, well, what are Academy people going to think about this? What are the Courses with Heart people going to think about this? How am I going to actually make sure everything fits together and still feels like it's abundant and awesome for me and my audience? Addressed all of those, and I was able to actually reduce the number of courses that I have on offer again. And that was really beautiful. I also made the decision not to run the Q3 mastermind again for Q4, not to extend it and do another round of that. It was really fun, and it was a really awesome opportunity for me to provide a low-cost mastermind option to some of the people in my audience. But I recognized again that it was actually me trying to change my business to fit people who didn't quite fit my business, or it was, me trying to create a new service offering when I didn't need one. And what I needed to do was really own the Rising Stars Shooting Stars Mastermind and their price points. I was feeling really uncomfortable about their price points. And so that's where Q3 Mastermind came from, if I'm 100% honest with myself. And so I made the decision to see Q3 Mastermind through. It had been amazing. Like, out of the 4 masterminds that were formed in Rising Stars Mastermind, 3 of them were phenomenal and absolutely took off. One of them was slow to get started, but they've actually decided to be a self-driven mastermind for a whole another quarter, and it's been really amazing to see them kind of find their stride at the end of that Q3, and now they've moved into a really beautiful masterminding arrangement together. And it's been really cool for me to see that. Plus, some of the people from the Q3 Mastermind ended up coming into Rising Stars Shooting Stars. And so it means that I'm able to be more present for those masterminds. And again, I've reduced my working hours quite significantly, particularly that time facing the camera. So I can be more strategic with the way that I'm actually spending time in my business. The second part was all of that faffing kind of time. So number one, I got really clear with my team about what's my job in my business and what isn't. And we've really sort of started to nail the dynamic between all of us working together in my business. Number two, I am much quicker to divert to my team in instances when I should be diverting to my team, because I'm protecting my time and my work hours. And then also I have been, I've hired an online business manager, which I did in early September. And having an online business manager, I can just blurt out all of the things that I'm feeling and, where I'm spending time. And I can actually get her advice on where we can start to make great changes and significantly impact on that time that I'm spending in my business. But here are some of the other things that I did that I think actually have contributed even more. Number one, Honest Dave and I got really clear on what we're here to do and whether we want to be spending 40 hours a week each on my business or not, because the answer is no. So we needed to come up with other purposes for our time, other things that we're going to spend our time on. So we're doing more day trips around Bali. We're spending more time exploring the local areas and actually enjoying our time here. We're getting more massages, including couples massages. We're getting more facials. We're going for more swims together in like fancy resorts and exploring, because that's what we want our life to be. We're also spending more time with Munchkin in Singapore. We've booked our holiday to be a little bit earlier, so we're going to Europe for a little longer. We've made some significant changes. We've also spent a lot more time just hanging out, the two of us, and connecting with each other and having big, long life conversations. We've spent more time managing our personal finances and putting together our personal goals and mapping out where we're going over the next few years. It's been absolutely amazing. Now, this is stuff I've been saying, oh, we should sit down and do that planning again. I've been saying that for the last 3 months, and we haven't done it because I didn't have enough time, but actually I had plenty of time. We just didn't commit to that time. So I've been scheduling a lot of our downtime in the calendars, not with downtime, because guess what I do when there's downtime? I just work in my business. You guys are addictive. I just want to hang out with the lady posse. And so instead of downtime in my diary, it has whitewater rafting, it has day trip to Ahmed, it has day trip to Seminyak, it has all the other stuff that we're doing. Go for an extra long swim down in the jungle, go for a 2-hour couples massage, go and have a day spa. We're living in Bali, we have this amazing opportunity, let's make the most of it. So that's definitely something we've been doing as well. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, particularly with those of you who are struggling to get the time down and, really nailing down what you're working on in your business is to look at the productivity of the time that you do spend on your business. So I've been really honest with myself about what is effective and productive time and what isn't effective and productive time. Now, one of the habits that crept in for me, and it was really interesting to notice what was going on and why I was doing it, this came out in a journaling session, was that I constantly was craving working from a cafe or working from a different workspace. And I couldn't understand why this was happening. Like, why do I constantly feel like I can't work unless I'm out of the house? We have a beautiful villa here. We have plenty of space. We have plenty of different workspaces. I can work by the pool. I can work in the kitchen. I can work in the bedroom. I can work at my desk. I can work on the bed. There's like lots of spaces for me to work at. And the internet here is great. Why do I feel like I need to go to a cafe? And one of the reasons was because my time that I was working was these long extended stretches of like 4 hours with no break again. I was like, why am I doing this to myself? And so for that 4-hour stretch to feel like it was fun and it was okay and that this was actually really lovely, I was going and doing that 4-hour stretch at a cafe. But if I was really honest with myself, I wasn't particularly productive during those times. And really the most effective and productive things I did during that was actually doing a Facebook Live. Like, oh, I'm doing a Facebook Live from this cafe. Oh, I'm doing a Facebook Live from that cafe. So what I decided to do instead and really experiment with was to go back to really tight time frames. Okay, I'm going to sit down for an hour. I'm going to do 2 Pomodoros of 25 minutes. And in that 25 minutes, I'm going to get A, B, and C done. And I would sit down and I would get that done. Now, when I got those tasks done, I would reward myself by going out to a cafe and having a delicious herbal tea. I would reward myself by going and getting a pedicure. I'd actually go and do those 2 things separately instead of doing them together. And guess what? I didn't need as much time. I didn't need to sit and work for 4 hours at a time. I was just faffing. So much faffery was coming back into my world, and it took a lovely journaling session for me to work that out. So if any of that has resonated with you, I hope that it has. And if you are finding yourself working way too many hours in your business, you really want to reduce them down, hopefully some of those strategies will help you to identify, 1, why this is happening in the first place, and 2, how you can start to reduce those work hours down again. Until next time, gorgeous one, I have been Tash Corbin. You have been a fabulous listener, and I cannot wait to see you shine. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart Centered Business Podcast. See you soon. Bye for now.